It's the Will. By Tom Carney, November 2016. The whole method of evolution is simply that of adjusting the matter aspect to the spirit aspect, so that the former proves entirely adequate as a body of expression for the latter. From a treatise on cosmic fire, page 231. In a human kingdom, the diversity that matters is the diversity of consciousness, and is not a matter of any physical attributes, including not only sexual and physical characteristics, but all of those things that we use as discriminators and value indicators, such as wealth, power, position, race, nationality, age, whether one is literate or not, rich or poor, etc. The discriminator, or indicator of consciousness, is always motive. Humans, who are not conscious of their intrinsic oneness with all humans and all life, exist in a one-dimensional illusion in which everything is separated from everything else. It is a world where nature is cruel and selective, where the survival of the fittest and constant competition for life and value motivate their every action. This illusion actually prevents those whom it imprisons from being able to be conscious of the synthesis that is. As we all are very much aware, our dense physical vehicles, or bodies as they are called, are actuated, or moved into action, by a virtually uncountable number of automatic reflexes. A reflex is an involuntary and nearly instantaneous movement in response to a stimulus. Involuntary, in this case, means unconscious and automatic. At this point in time, science includes any sort of inner body or external dense physical phenomena that are registered by one or the other of our five senses: sound, touch, sight, taste, or smell, as the stimulus which causes a specific reflex. So, a reflex is an action caused by our registering some specific impact event with one or more of our senses. The registration of the impact triggers a specific detailed response based on the data from the registered impact. There is a bit of coded instruction, an electrical algorithm, what we call a thought form, based in the nervous system that says if this is registered, do this. These thought forms, or algorithms, beat our hearts, cause us to breathe, and do all the millions of other things that occur quite below the threshold of our conscious awareness. Even when we are sleeping, these very complex functions go on in the dense physical body without even the slightest conscious effort from any one of us. If or when a problem occurs or something fails to work properly, we receive various kinds of indicators which are triggered by resident algorithms. If this happens, then do this. Pain, fever, dizziness, fainting, for example. A piece of food gets caught in the trachea. An embedded algorithm triggers a sudden powerful awareness of the fact that we are not breathing, and stimulates a huge display of this fact, such as choking and gasping for breath. This event acts in turn as a stimulus on those in our immediate surroundings. Someone, if we are lucky, applies the Heimlich maneuver, which if successful will force air from the lungs and force us to cough and hopefully expel the object from the trachea. The coding for these instructions, which is present in all human beings, is of very ancient origin. These algorithms or thought forms were developed and perfected during the process of adjusting the matter aspect to the spirit aspect, through experimentation, experience, an expression, the scientific method, over many eons. The dense manifestation of these coded instructions, now hardwired into the dense physical apparatus, are what we call the genetic code. It is this fact that makes the dense physical body, not a principle. At present, the physical body is the only one which is as yet so fully developed that it has in this planetary scheme of ours no further evolutionary development, except in so far as the spiritual, a soul-conscious individual, man can affect it, and most of the effect is produced in the etheric body and not in the dense physical. This is a point little grasped but of major importance. From the book, Esoteric Healing, page 612, those of us whose consciousness has evolved to a point where we are free from the one-dimensional fixation are also aware of the existence of the subtle multidimensional levels of the body, the etheric, emotional, and mental vehicles. We realize that our sensory apparatus operates with the same amazing sensitivity, accuracy, and speed in these subtle planes. We can, and do, register energy impacts from these subtle planes of many, many different frequencies, some of which are mental, some of which are emotional, and also, some of which are in joy, and some of which are dreadful. These coded instructions, thought form algorithms, were, and are, created in the same manner as those which control the functions of our dense physical body. We think. Energy follows thought and produces a program, or thought form, an algorithm which initiates an action, the process of experiment. The action either works or does not, the process of experience. We think some more. If we understand why the program failed, we modify it, or make a new one. If we fail to understand that the program does not work, we repeat it. Many of these other thought forms are very old as well. An abundance of them were created by ourselves during the eons of incarnations in which we lived various lives of experimentation, experience, and expression both as men and women in various situations and garnered knowledge of what worked, what did not. Every human being is relatively telepathically sensitive in these subtle arenas. Our emotional bodies, developed over eons, are super highly sensitive to telepathic inputs. Emotional telepathy or feeling telepathy was basically the Atlantean mode of communication, quoted from Telepathy and the Etheric Vehicle, page 17, which we register coming from the etheric, emotional, and mental planes. Ancient lurkers. Unfortunately, a rather large number of these coded instructions were developed by ourselves during those incarnations when we were living under the power of the one-dimensional great illusion of separation. Consequently, being motivated and manipulated by the great lie, the illusion of separation and death, we literally used our gradually expanding intelligence, energy following thought, to create or program patterns of behavior that we deemed necessary to fulfill our desires, and protect ourselves from what we feared. Many of these elemental bits of coded instructions, algorithms, now reside in our subtle vehicles. A large number of these anciently designed algorithms are what we now call traditions and habits. Traditions and habits. In the idea of traditions, one should be very subtly discriminating. If they are understood as stratifications coming from the ancestors, then indeed we arrive at the same emanations, which came from all the surroundings. The traditions will contain all the imprints of the time. But for evolution, constant renewal and broadening is required. It is correct to think about the spiral, because eternal growth affirms infinity. Creativeness is intensified in continual renovation, and infinity shines truly by the creative power of diversity. Thus, traditions cannot be looked upon as a guiding principle. Usually the so-called traditions, affirmed by people, degenerate into customs. Customs pass into habits. Thus, habits will express all the stratifications of the past. From the book, Fiery World 3, number 78. A tradition or a habit is an acquired behavior pattern that has been followed over many incarnations until it becomes almost or totally involuntary. Again, involuntary means that most of these habits or algorithms reside below the threshold of our consciousness. In doing what we do because it has traditionally been done is, like machine behavior, unconscious repetitiveness. The good news: unlike the algorithms which control our dense physical vehicle, these very powerful behavior programs which we call traditions and habits, being resident in our subtle bodies, are not hardwired. They can be modified, changed, upgraded, or deleted. During each incarnation, in which we remained locked in the prison of form identification, we modified, updated, deleted some, and reinforced others of these programs. Most were the products of a seriously deluded personality. Some were the result of flashes of insight which generated seed programs of kindness, gentleness, and concern for others. All of these programs, including those which were beneficial to the processes of the evolution of the inner person, are stored in the Akashic records. As Alice Bailey indicated, the Akashic record is like an immense photographic film, registering all the desires and earth experiences of our planet. From Light of the Soul, pages 275 to 276. That was the metaphor that Alice used in 1927 when she first published the book. Just to update that metaphor, I think of the Akashic record as a vast cloud storage unit in the Hall of Wisdom. Each of us has a file in the Akashic cloud in which all of the faculty or the essential algorithms for each incarnation are updated and stored until needed to formulate the next incarnation. The Akashic cloud is a department run by a large group of probably fifth-rate programming nerds working for the 4 lords of karma in the solar system. These 4 are specifically concerned with the evolution at the present time of the human kingdom. These programming experts are all concerned with the halls of records, or with the keeping of the book, as it is called in the Christian Bible. They are known in the Christian world as the recording angels. Taken from the book, Initiation Human and Solar, page 40. Anyway, when we start a new incarnation based on our karmic conditions, it is possible to sort of pick up where we left off, or go to work on another aspect of our development on the path that needs attention. The programs that we bring in with us when we are born are the programmed habits that reside in the emotional and lower mental bodies. these programs have the same power and react in the same manner as those coded into our genes. At this point in the evolutionary development of soul consciousness, many of the programs, for many of the incarnating souls, are still concerned with the thoughts and desires of the separative self's ego, or sense of personal separative value, that need evolutionary development. It is these old habits created by energy following thought during the long dark period of our imprisonment in the cave of one-dimensional ignorance, that make up the challenges we face as we struggle to move from the darkness into the light. It is also the seed programs of compassion and love that were able to take root and survive in the darkness that are now flourishing in this new state of awareness and inclusive consciousness. We have all been crawling and clawing, fighting and losing, and fighting some more, never giving up, making some good, and some bad karma, but always inching, occasionally footing, forward towards the light. I have always thought that this whole warrior battle thing was the way of the path. We gain through experiment, experience and expression. If it works, we gain a step. If it does not work, we lose a step. Hence the path into the light. Hence the struggle, and hence the inevitable, unavoidable triumph. The light into which we have been dragging ourselves is the amazing realization that we were not born to die. We are not these forms in which we have dressed ourselves. We are, in fact, immortal beings who are involved in a cosmic dance of unfolding intention. For anyone who has actually looked, from either a micro-personal or macro worldview, the absurdity of the habitual or traditional view of our lives, of being born just to eventually die, is overwhelmingly obvious. Getting and spending, we lay waste our powers. Then we die. I mean, what's the point? Well, we arrive, rather suddenly it seems, at this really incredible mind-blowing realization of our actually mortal reality, as being the only rational option, and I mean that as a factual description of what happens in the lower mental body when the light of a realization explodes or gets turned on, so to speak. The whole thing becomes reasonable. It's about expanding consciousness, about figuring out what is going on, about getting unfooled, unconned. To put it scientifically, it's about adjusting the matter aspect to the spirit aspect, so that the former proves entirely adequate as a body of expression for the latter. Having come to this conclusion, there can be no if about it, like, if the fiery world exists. In this, if, is already contained a great mistrust. No good words could cover such deadly doubt. Taken from Fiery World 3, number 556. And it is precisely this algorithm of doubt along with its constant companion, the algorithm of fear, which we most need to deal with. Master M calls these two the dark whisperers. They seem to be running constantly in the background of our mental and emotional vehicles and generating no end of problems for us. Our experience with the new light performed a sort of disk wipe. However, ESE2 programs and a few others, such as the pride and, in very subtle ways, the greed programs, which are sort of the kernel of the personal will program, are still running. The delete button for these programs is the spiritual will. The issue is that it takes the spiritual will to use the spiritual will. When one has the necessary heart alignment, when one can love enough, one can wield the pure reasoning will. The heart as an aspect of pure reason requires careful consideration. It is usually considered the organ of pure love, but from the angle of the esoteric sciences, love and reason are synonymous terms. From Rays on the Initiations, pages 27 and 28. Just do it. It has to be done wholeheartedly. We will know whether or not we use the delete button, because it will only need to be done once. There is always a second chance, and the possibility of growth. The key here is the unavoidable expanding consciousness of humanity, that includes each of us, which means the universal growing awareness of our individual and collective one true self, and which signifies the transfiguration or the movement of humanity from the Piscean and into the Aquarian consciousness. Before the future can manifest in form, it must be realized in consciousness. Realizing something means manifesting it in a thought form. This is the ticket for the train to Shambhala. All aboard.